Hello everybody, so this video is entitled MSTR Stock Q2 Talk. We need to talk about the second quarter results. The stock didn't move that much of MSTR didn't move too much. And we need to talk also about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has some relevant news going on right now, especially with BIP 110 failing. And we're going to talk a little bit about Stretch as well. Again, this is a long overdue update because I am still traveling. I am exhausted. I am in France right now. So anyways, lots of traveling for me. I can't cover the day-to-day as much as I used to just a month ago. But the point is, some time aside for MSTR. Let's look at MSTR. MSTR actually slightly outperformed this past week. On a week where Bitcoin was down 3%, you would have expected MSTR to be down more than 3%, maybe 5%. We didn't see any of that. MSTR was only down 1.5%. What that means is that the MNAV actually went back up 1.05%. Still very disappointing, but we are creeping up towards back maybe at 1.1, and a 1.1 wouldn't be as disappointing, would it? So perhaps Sailor didn't ATM as much this time. I happen to believe that for the stock to recover, for Stretch to recover, all Sailor needs to do is nothing at all. And whatever Sailor is doing right now, I think that's his version of doing nothing, his version of not doing much. We cannot do much as long as Bitcoin is sitting at 63,000. There's not much we can do. And so, of course, Q2 was mostly reporting things we already knew, things we could have already calculated. Sure, we got a buyback program in STRC, that's $1 billion, but even then I think that's mostly signaling because he only bought back 25 million, so I don't think he's going to buy that much STRC back. We have a MSTR repurchase program for $1 billion. Again, I also think that's mostly signaling. We're trading at a 1.05 MNAV, so there's no really reason to do that. The plan is always the same. The plan is for Stretch to get back to 99. To 100 to get back to that level so that we can ATM Stretch again, so that we can resume the Bitcoin buys. And in my view, this will inevitably happen when Bitcoin recovers. When Bitcoin gets back above 80K, that's when Stretch inevitably gets back to 100. At least in my view, right? No financial advice, but in my view, we with Bitcoin more expensive, we have a greater BTC rating, right? The BTC rating, the Bitcoin backing STRC will increase as the value of Bitcoin increases. And that's how you get back to 100. And I think all we have to do is wait. This summer has been the summer of waiting. We're waiting for so many different stocks, not just MSTR. We're waiting for things in the Middle East to be over. We are waiting for inflation to come back down. We're waiting for oil to come back down. We're waiting for rates to come back down. This has been the story for, 8 months now, almost 9 months of just waiting for a market to get back to its senses. And it's going to do that eventually. At least that is my view. By the way, breaking $90, that will be a big deal. And we're close. We're at $89.50. We're pretty close to $90. I think $90 will be a first psychological level on Stretch. If we get back past 90, I think it's a shorter trip back to 100. But we have to realize that Stretch dropped partially because, of course, Bitcoin crashed. That's one reason. But another reason that I think we don't talk about is, of course, bonds trading at an all-time low and yields being at an all-time high. By all-time, I mean in recent history, right? In recent history, we haven't had bonds be this poor performance. We haven't had yield so high on bonds in recent history. I mean, I cannot recall the 30-year Treasury being this high ever. I wasn't investing when the 30-year Treasury was higher than that. I mean, if you look at the direction of, say, the 30-year Treasury, it's nothing but a catastrophe. It was at 2% in 2022. We're now at 5.26%. Yields are going up across the board. Bonds are selling off across the board. The market is requiring a much higher yield because of all of the uncertainty that is going on. The cost of money is going up, and as a result of that, of course, a digital credit like Stretch is also going to drop. It's also going to drop because Stretch is still being compared to the risk-free yield. It is being compared to the TLT. It is being compared to the 10-year, to the 30-year bonds. So bonds are not doing well, and it's not surprising that STRC is not doing well because it is a digital credit instrument. It's the preferred instrument. And on top of that, you add Bitcoin's poor performance, and we understand why we are in this situation. I believe all we need to do is wait. All we need to do is wait. Let's move on, talk about Bitcoin. BIP 110, and if you follow the Bitcoin influencer sphere, you know there's been so many fierce debates on BIP 110. I've always stayed out of that debate. I don't think it's my place, right? Especially as I comment mostly treasury companies, but it failed. And no change in the protocol. And so the fact that it failed, in my view, creates less uncertainty. It creates less uncertainty because if it would have passed, it could have created a much bigger uncertainty in the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin remains steadfast, remains unchanged. I happen to believe we didn't need more uncertainty. Like we don't need to add. We already have so much madness going on in macro. Like the last thing we need is a change to the Bitcoin protocol. At least that is what I think. If a change is needed on the Bitcoin protocol, I am sure the forces will work on another implementation, but it seems like right now it's not the right time to change, and we're not changing. And of course, that was Saylor was advocating for, right? Saylor didn't want to see a change. He's economically, he has a huge stake economically in Bitcoin, and so his voice, it looks like, carried a lot of weight. And so the protocol doesn't change, that's fine by me. The protocol doesn't change, that's fine by me. Wallet issues. Let's talk briefly about this. You may have seen this trending. Issues with cold card wallet, with random number generators going haywire. Some people losing their Bitcoin. I believe this backdrop is actually a plus. Unfortunately, really, because I like self-custody as much as anybody. But if software is unsafe, if there's issues with firmware on all these cold wallets, if there's issues with them, I think this will lead to more and more people holding Bitcoin in the form of brokerage. And if you own Bitcoin in a brokerage, of course, the question is, what wrapper do you want, right? Do you just want to own Bitcoin with your brokerage in that way you just have one layer of wrapper, but make no mistake, not your keys, not your coins, right? So if you just own Bitcoin on a brokerage account, it's still not your Bitcoin, but you're comfortable with wrapper. So there's different wrappers, right? IBIT is the most straightforward wrapper for Bitcoin, but there is also MSTR, and MSTR is just owning Bitcoin through a stock, owning Bitcoin through a stock. I think a lot of people are wary seeing people lose their life savings, and they like owning it within a brokerage account. Talking about Bitcoin, this is, I don't know if this is the 10th or the 20th time that Hormuz reopens, but nonetheless, this should be positive for the market. This should be positive for Bitcoin. If this holds the Middle East conflict. So if the Middle East conflict if there's actually a deal, that's good for Bitcoin. However many days that's going to last, that deal is going to last. I don't know. Last time didn't last a few weeks, did it? So we'll see. But that's actually pretty good for Bitcoin if we see some easing of the tensions over there. So that's why I'm very hopeful for Monday. I'm very hopeful for a good open, especially if we have cancellations on the attacks. And if the Middle East has not helped markets, it has not helped Bitcoin, it has not helped strategy. The Middle East really hasn't helped us, and so we see this positivity as of this morning, and that's a good thing. So much positive going on. I'm positive going into the week. Bitcoin holding at 63,000. Again, disappointing, but it hasn't continued to drop, right? We didn't see the 40K that everybody was calling for. We didn't see the 30K everybody was calling for. So make no mistake, it's disappointing performance, but it was disappointing performance a month ago. This stock, this market, and Bitcoin has been disappointing for at the very least 6 to 7 weeks when it comes to crypto-specific disappointment. But when it comes to the market in general, it's been disappointing for months. So nothing has changed. It has not worsened. So I'm happy to see that. But if we want MSTR to come back up, if we want Stretch to come back up, we need Bitcoin to come back up. And I believe Bitcoin will come back up once the macro situation, among other things, but especially the macro situation is resolved. once that is resolved, I believe the markets will do better. But we wait, we keep waiting, and it's been a tough, long wait. You know, when I see the price of rates, when I see interest rates, I tell myself, I think of people trying to sell a house who's been sitting on real estate for like 5 years, hoping that it improves, and it just seems like we keep waiting, and then we add another 6 months wait, and then we add another 6 months wait. But you know, this too shall pass. In my view, this too shall pass. I definitely have not given up on this stock. This is a stock. Remember, this is a stock. I started covering this stock on this channel when it was still 5 times cheaper, right? Strategy. When I first covered strategy, it was still 5 times cheaper than it is right now. So that's also something to come in to keep in mind, right? Highly volatile stock, but nonetheless still a success story despite strategy trading under 100. It is still a success story. It is still one of the most interesting stocks out there, at least in my view. Anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.